once.
Oh, yeah. Might be useful for the first bit.
Maybe set a 4 to 3 or something. Yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah.
So I guess we can.
And off you go.
Yeah, well, I need to do some more prep, but yeah.
Hey Hans, you should add an enablement for your spell check dictionary.
What?
You should add an enablement for your spell check dictionary.
Yeah, whatever. That was quick. Changing of rooms. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hans de Goede, and well, I work for Red Hat. I'm giving a presentation today about making Fedora run better on laptops, which seems to be a popular topic, which is good. And well, let's just get started. So, for starters, I would like to introduce our team. We are a new team in Red Hat who is going to focus on, well, making Fedora run better on laptops. So what do we want to do specifically? We try to look at things from a user point of view, from a user experience point of view, and improve the user experience. Specifically, we focus on hardware-related problems. So if there's something like evolution not syncing properly with your calendar or something, that's not something our team will be doing. But suspend resume issues with docking stations, things like that is where our focus will be. Currently, if you buy, say, the new Lenovo ThinkPad T470S, which is the KB Lake generation of the T460S, you'll probably have a suboptimal experience, right? Usually, if you buy a new generation laptop the day they come out, that doesn't end well. You go through a painful phase until everything is fixed upstream. We want to make that better. We hope to make that better. That's going to be tricky to do actually, because that will require to convince hardware vendors to give us early hardware access, which is a problem. And yeah, I really want to. A friend of mine coined the phrase friction-free computing or friction-free user experience. We want to make it as easy to run Fedora on a select list of laptops as it currently is to run Mac OS X on a Mac, right? Because a lot of people in the tech sector, even though they're working with open source and doing open source things, or they're working on the web using all sorts of open source technology, they opt for a MacBook. And I think one of the reasons that's being done is just because the experience of running Linux on a laptop is not that great. If you're not a tech-savvy user who can fix their own stuff. So that's what we're aiming for. Well, who are we? We're Alberto Ruiz in the back, who is our manager, who's based in the UK at the moment. Benjamin Berg, who starts February 1st. He was here for a meeting with the rest of us already, even though he hasn't started yet. But he's traveling back home today. Christian Kellner, who's in the Munich office, just like Benjamin. They will have access to a lot of laptops, because a lot of the laptops for EMEA associates are distributed from the Munich office. Miroslav Shodil, an intern, who's currently back at the uni, but will be back in July, I guess, to work with us. Oliver Gutierrez, who is currently giving a talk on Fleet Commander, so he's not here. Peter Jones, who should be here somewhere. And Rob Marshall.
Christian's here too, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sure, of course. Hi, Christian. So yeah, this is us, and well, we're going to try to make your life easier if you run Fedora on a laptop. So we had our first team kickoff meeting this week. We got together to make a plan. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a bunch of things, but the main thing is we're going to select a couple of popular laptop models, because it will be impossible to support every existing laptop model out there. Think on models which are used a lot by Linux users, but also by Red Hat internally. So ThinkPads, the T460S, the T470S, the X1 Carbon, latest gen. The Dell XPS models are popular, right? Including the developer editions. So we're going to try to get access to a number of these models and make a list of them, and then we'll make sure if you use these models you have a smooth experience. We plan to the way we plan to do that is run a standardized test suite, or one test suite. Actually, it's a test plan. It needs to be done manually, and then see what doesn't work, and then file bugs and start working on resolving those issues. We also plan to document all this work, so a user can see, I want to buy a laptop, I want to run Fedora. Which models are being tested and what is the status of them, how well do they work at the moment. So we currently have some skeleton web pages for them. Well, they're not all skeletons, but this is the landing page basically, which we have, which is not much yet. It explains that we strive to have Fedora working well on any laptop, but yeah, since that's impossible, we focus on a number. I specifically worded it that way because I believe it's important that we're not seen as playing favors to a certain vendor or certain models. We have written a test plan, which looks like this, and it's long. So we also have a bunch of suspend resume tests. The second test is interesting because my colleagues pointed me out to me like, are you checking if things work after a resume? Yes, because that's all called in one point of the plan. After resume, recheck all general functionality tests. So this is actually again running 20 or 25 tests again after a suspend resume. And so we try to cover all our bases here. And if you're interested in what we're doing, you could take a look here. And if you think like you're missing this or that, let us know. Although the goal is to keep this plan somewhat limited, not too in-depth, because we want to be able to say test a laptop in a day, a work day, so 8 hours. Because we also need to retest them after kernel updates and things like that. So, there's going to be a lot of work then. Then per laptop we're going to create a report page, which will be linked from the main landing page. You can use it over here. Currently there's only one, my laptop, which is an XPS 15. And this is the skeleton page for that for now. It has room for known issues. It explains it was tested with that kernel on Fedora 25 workstation. When I say make Fedora run better on laptops, I mean make Fedora workstation or the GNOME 3 desktop running on Fedora run better on laptops. We don't have the manpower or plans to look at XFCE or KDE or whatever. Some of the work we do will of course also benefit those if it's at the kernel level, but if it's higher level integration work, then yeah, sorry, the people who care about these desktops will. Well, they can always ask us questions, how did you solve that? Right, but it's not something we will actively be working on. I think that's important to mention. Well, as I said before, we'll of course file bugs for any issues found and work on them, or work with relevant teams and relevant upstreams to try and get things fixed. My advice would be, if you want to buy a laptop and there is a model which sort of suits your needs in the list we try to support, look at the testing results page. Because, for example, we'll soon have access to the T470S, and we're going to create this. We're going to run it through all the tests, create a wiki page for it. But it might be too early for some users to buy it, right? I expect there to be a list of known issues which we are going to resolve on that page, and that will take a while probably. So, as I said before, the test plan, we want to be able to execute it in one working day, because we're going to rerun it. Because the next step of the plan is that we'll test them as they come out, right? And a lot of the issues with laptops are when they just hit the market, and we just need to work on Linux integration and fix certain hardware-related bugs. But another problem is, which is also in my eyes a big problem for users, as I said before, I aim for a friction-free user experience, is that if they install updates and they get a new kernel from Fedora, because we jump kernel version when possible, because it's impossible to do security updates for the older kernels with the manpower we have, You can get regressions, right? I just heard a story today that someone within Red Hat is actually already using the T470S, and it was, oh no, it's not. It was the XPS 13 Kaby Lake version, wrong laptop. But he's using a laptop. It worked. He installed a bunch of updates, and his touchpad no longer worked. Well, not being able to control your mouse cursor is sort of an unpleasant user experience, to put it mildly, right? So we want to also retest them at least when the RC1 kernel comes out, because I don't know if you're familiar with the kernel release cycle, but what happens is most kernel developers work on changes which all get merged in the merge window, which is just after a final has been released and then before RC1. So after RC1 in the release cycle of the kernel, we're basically only talking about bug fixes. So we want to take that RC1, which has the bulk of all the changes which are going to land in the next kernel, and then run tests with them on the laptops models we support, so we can detect problems caused by kernel regressions early and actually get the upstream community pointed out to them before the final gets released, which should help a lot with fixing them, because Linus will bash people over their head if they don't fix regressions. But that only works if you point them out before the final, right? If it happens after the final, then Linus is already focusing on the next one. And so that's part of it. Well, there's a lot of testing going on here. And most of us are software engineers. We want to focus on fixing stuff and not testing it. So we plan to work also on automated tests, especially in the Munich office that will happen. We hope to build a test lab there to run continuous integration tests as far as possible, right? I mean, testing the touchpad is a difficult one. We could maybe build some little robot with a servo which moves something left-right over the touchpad, right? But yeah, I mean, we can try. We need to look into those kinds of things. Also depending on how often touchpads regress, right? A big problem for our team is going to be prioritizing stuff, I think, because we can spend all our time in writing the test suite and not fix a single bug. Or we can spend all our time fixing bugs with new models and have old models regress because we don't detect them in time. So we're going to have to do a balancing act there. Last thing which we also want to look at, if we have time over, but maybe also prioritize it a bit because otherwise it won't happen, is look into improving power consumption on laptops. At least definitely, in some cases we just suck in power consumption. There are some places where we're bad, we really need to fix those. And then as we have time, slowly improve also some of the more areas where we're not as good as we could be. So maybe before I switch to this next topic, because it's semi-related, it's also something user experience focused, laptop focused, which I've been working on as part of the team. I might actually just jump forward to this one first, because the laptop testing stuff and improving in general is the main focus of our team and of this talk. So are there any ideas or suggestions? What can we do to make your life better as a laptop user?
What is the targeted user base for that? Because if you target those Apple boys, guys, like this, whatever, they want to run the Firefox and watch the Facebook and videos and listen to music and stuff like that. And you skip all that because you end at the kernel level, so it just runs. Lots of video players.
Okay, so the question is, what is the targeted user base? The targeted user base is, I would say, non-specialized use cases, which is indeed browsing the web, watching YouTube, but also video conferencing. And right, if you have a really special niche use case, we're going to probably not really. So Blender is probably a little bit on the side already, right? Say if that's something which you use. But again, those are mostly high software things, right? Although something like video conferencing would be interesting to look at for us because that also plays into power consumption, for example. And so video conferencing would be a use case which is something we would look at from a power consumption point of view, right? But not from a I cannot connect to this server point of view, because then you're talking higher levels. And
what about the window managers, which are currently supported, and how do you...
So the question is, what about window managers? As I said before, we support Fedora Workstation, we support GNOME Free, GNOME Shell, and that's it. If you're running another window manager, if you're doing one of the spins, now don't have people from the KDE or XFCE spin here, please do talk to us. We're interested in helping you with we solve these issues this way, but we don't have manpower to do anything more than share our experience and let you benefit that way.
What about Apple hardware?
So the question is, what about Apple hardware? It's a difficult one because a lot of the Apple users just want to use Mac OS X, but a few people want to run Fedora. It's on our radar, we discussed it, and it's sort of in the nice to have category. So depending on how all the other stuff goes and how overworked we get, we may or may not look into that. We discussed it, it's on our radar. I assume you're talking about running Fedora on Apple hardware, right?
Of course.
Yeah. I cannot make any promises, but it's somewhere on our radar.
The reason I bring it up is, I mean, it's a chicken and egg problem, partly, in that because it's so difficult to run, nobody's prepared to run it. I suspect that the gaps required to make it run well are sufficiently big as well, that it's not going to be something that shows immediate fruit very soon. It might be something that is worth understanding what the gaps are and getting those things documented sooner rather than later, even if it doesn't lead immediately to working operating system on ARM.
Yes.
I'd like to comment on how to install Fedora. I recently installed on all different Macs. The latest Fedora.
Sorry, can you speak up a bit?
Oh, sorry. I recently installed Fedora 25 on 4 different Macs on 4 different generations. And quite frankly, I was amazed by how well it works. And the things that did not work were things that were not specifically nice at all. So I think we have to really sort of debug the myth that it doesn't work. It works at least as well as theirs or whatever. And for instance, one of the issues I had was I lost Wi-Fi in half my house. The browser I had, the spectrums I had, I followed theirs and others that use it. So it has nothing specific to
Yes.
Mac.
Yeah, so the remark was that Fedora actually already runs pretty well on some generation MacBooks. And that's completely true. That is because there are people in the Fedora community and the wider Fedora project who care about this. Newer generations, I've heard, are less well supported. Right? Because at one time there was this thing where there were a number of people actively looking into doing Fedora on Macs. And I know, for example, that the Anaconda team has a bunch of MacBooks which they test installation on, but those are older MacBooks, right? So one issue here is going to be hardware access, another issue is going to be manpower, a third issue is going to be prioritization. So yeah, there is no easy answer here, but MacBooks are definitely on our radar running Fedora on MacBooks. And you're right, the other person who asked the question that it also is a chicken and egg problem, that if we can tell Mac users that it's possible to run Fedora, then we may get more users that way and more bug fixes from them or more feedback, more valuable feedback from them.
Will you take care with the a little bit older hardware architectures as well? Because there's pretty much people out there still running T400s, 410s, 220s, 230s, that kind of stuff. Not only the latest and greatest, because you actually don't need the latest and greatest.
Yeah. So the question is, will we take care of older hardware generations? Let me switch back to the wiki page stuff. So currently, this is very flat. It just has a tested laptops. We want to do Fedora tested laptops and Fedora community tested laptops, maybe as two separate pages. And our team will not be able to do that because of manpower reasons. We do plan to make a lot of the CI tests, also those which don't require dedicated hardware external to the laptop, available to the community. We actually want to fully integrate them into the workstation, so that you get the workstation live CD and you get an option boot workstation, test memory, run Fedora workstation test suite. And then you can provide feedback and submit it. So we're sort of looking, it's a valid question, it's a valid point that a lot of people are happy with older ThinkPads and want to keep using them, or older Dell Latitudes or whatever. And it's definitely a valid point, but we're not specifically going to spend resources on them because there's only 8 of us and so much work to do.
Hardware, I got the notebooks in the Munich office, so if I can help, let me know.
Okay, sure. We'll talk to Christian behind you. He's also in Munich.
So I've heard a little about this project. I'm Adam Williamson from Fedora QA, where people don't know me. And I know you wanted to talk to me about it already. So there are some things I can suggest to help with this. I guess the note I have right now is, I notice you're doing a lot of stuff through the wiki. And I have some crazy tools for interacting with the wiki, but I think you may benefit
from better tools? I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're currently at the very early stages of writing a thing for doing manual validation tests better than just editing wiki pages. And I suspect we may be able to plug your workflow into that, and that might.
Yeah. Well, Oliver, who isn't here right now, is actually a web developer. He's working on Fleet Commander, but slowly moving over to our team.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't quite hear that.
Oliver,
Yeah.
don't remember
From
his.
the original team, yeah.
Yeah. So is actually a web developer, and we already talked to the Fedora OpenQE guys. We've actually in the Brno office. We've been through all the floors. We started talking to the Anaconda team. What do you use for testing? And then the RTT team, and then the RHEL desktop QE team, and the Fedora OpenQE team. So we're aware what infrastructure is there. And for example, ResultsDB looks interesting, but it needs a better front end.
So the RHEL-NG thing we're talking about is basically intended to be a simple web app which lets you submit manual testing results which then go to ResultsDB, and that will allow various other levels of integration which you can't do with wiki pages very easily.
No, but we definitely discussed tooling during our team meeting, and we want to piggyback on what's already there, probably OpenQE, ResultsDB, but do a better web interface, so we don't need to edit like this web page, right? This needs to be generated and not manually edited. I completely agree with you.
We will talk.
Laura.
So you mentioned is that for other desktop environments, perhaps not focusing on them, but being able to share exactly how you fix things. One thing I think that might be valuable is just documenting how you fix common things, such as how to add a port for your laptop, so that people maybe are looking at things and they might want to take the initiative themselves. They can figure out exactly how do I do this, if it work for this laptop, maybe it'll work for me.
So the remark is it might be good to document how you fix common issues. For example, one thing which comes to my mind is backlight control on laptops, right? That doesn't always work. You can control the backlight brightness. Yeah, very, very valid point. Very valid point. Can someone write this down?
When I want to check the laptop, I usually grab the Google and end up on some Ubuntu or SUSE pages. So is there some plan to like aggregate what is already existing elsewhere in other distributions?
Okay, so the question is, we're essentially going to do a bit of Fedora hardware compatibility database, right? And currently, if you say you look for XPS 13 Linux on Google before you buy the laptop, you end up usually on some Ubuntu forum page. Are we going to work with them? It's an interesting question. It's not on our radar, and I think it's outside of our scope to do that. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
They might do it.
Yeah. You first.
Do you know if there is some framework for an automation test or something like that that could be used, like that could be, using the time of let's talk about my laptop, the idle time for my laptop, and of course my authorization to, run some kind of automation test and grab the things like that you have the software for? Let me just put one more comment. Why I'm talking about this is because we know that we want to have the better Fedora running for most of the large type of different hardware we have. And I know that's such challenging task.
Yeah. So the question is, will it be possible to do something like, currently you have a number of internet things where you can share compute time from your computer to analyze radio waves from the galaxy, if there's extraterrestrial life out there and things like that. Can we do something similar where I can share my laptop to run some of the tests you guys are going to do? Maybe. We're currently looking at a live CD approach. So your laptop would then need to reboot or netboot or whatever into that CD, which then has the latest version of Fedora 25 with all updates also applied on top, and then it would run the test. Because we do want to run the test in somewhat of a controlled environment. It's something to think about. But
About the choice of models, I don't know to what extent you do it already, but I think it would be a good idea to focus
Okay, so the question is, would it be a good idea to focus on models which are available without Windows? No, that's not realistic. There are just almost no laptops available without Windows, especially for consumers. And if you're a big company, you can sort of negotiate that, but no, I don't think that's realistic.
There are models, and you pick 3 or 4 laptop models to test on. If you would pick the 3 or 4 ones that are available without Windows, it would be more helpful for the community.
They have no users, almost no users. We want to pick the models which a lot of people use, right? We want to pick the popular models within the Linux community and also the wider computer user community.
Lenovo provides for defensive tool for advanced model management settings like buffer proliferation and extending lifetime data rate for Windows, obviously. Are you planning to at least initiate development of some tool that provide equivalent user experience of Fedora?
So you were talking about power management?
Power management tools and
Yeah, we are Christian specifically in the back has been looking for the last month or so on PowerTop and what PowerTop does and what it doesn't do, and making it more user friendly, maybe putting all that into a library that we can put reporting daemons on top of that library and things like that. So yeah, that's definitely on our radar, looking into improving the tools for power management research, or figuring out what is actually consuming the power so that you can, in a targeted way, focus on optimizing stuff.
The other topic comes from the yesterday's presentation is how do we upgrade the BIOS in those laptops? So will you include the check that if the vendor supports the upgrade of BIOS in the laptop without Windows?
Interesting point. Yeah, I guess we should put that on the test list. Oh, sorry. So the question was, yesterday, Peter Jones, also from our team, gave the firmware update talk. And about how it's now possible with GNOME software to just say that it's on, at least on some vendor laptops, that it recognizes what firmware you have, that there's an update available, and that you can just install it from Linux, or reboot into the BIOS to do the actual update. And the question is, will we have that as part of the test plan? I think it should be there, yes.
One more question. So talking about engaging community, so what else we can help instead of just to be sending bugs? What else we can help?
You can run the test plan.
You can run the test plan and repeatedly run the test plan, right, to catch regressions. So we want to make that easy, right? I want to say we want to provide a live CD where it's just a boot option to run a whole bunch of the tests automated, and some tests will be interactive. You can probably choose when you choose the option, boot into task mode. I only want to run the automated test because I'm willing to do that and walk away, but I don't have time to do the manual stuff, or give me the full-blown test.
What's the percentage for the automation you guys have?
What?
What is the percentage of the automation you guys have right now?
At the moment, 0. So, but we're working. We had our kickoff with this team this week, right? We are starting basically February 1st.
Okay.
So yeah, we hope to get there, but we'll have to see. It will be difficult to automate everything.
So I was just curious about this plan to let people run the test because it seems a bit contradictory. Because it seems like the idea is to focus on very few models and try to be really focused. I mean, you're going to have all those models physically within your team.
Yes.
So presumably you would be able to just run the test on those models yourself. If you're running the test out to other people, they're going to wind up running their tests on their laptops, which aren't the models you're targeting. So I mean, how do you reconcile that? What's the plan there?
Okay. So Adam's question was: you have a list of models you want to support as a team, or make sure that they're well tested and documented what any known issues are. And on the other hand, I'm talking about community testing. How does, well, as I said before, we want to have 2 lists. We want to have a list like this is the list which we as the Fedora laptop team, or whatever, or officially the Fedora desktop hardware enablement team, support. And on the other hand, if the community wants to support some different models, for example, a model which can be bought without Windows, more power to the community, right?
Okay. So you're kind of providing the test suite as a
Yes, that's basically the idea.
One's about letting people know what they can expect to work in the test plan on everything else that, right? Right. Informed decisions about buying.
Yeah.
The other one's about these are the things we're fixing.
Right.
And the hope is that the fix.
So there's a question in the back, I understood.
Have you guys looked at using the laptops that they're using inside Red Hat? They have certain Lenovo models. But think that, well, they have certain models, and those models are not up there on the board. And that is a vast set of hardware that you could easily get your hands on and have internal record employees file bugs for.
Yes, yes.
I don't know, 300 bugs on the different laptops I've been dealing with, but those are not the ones that are out there.
Okay, so I tried to keep the list limited, but the Red Hat internal models are definitely part of our hit list. But we try to maybe keep the older ones, which will be phased out soon, off of it, because we have to limit the set, right? So for example, the T460S is actually being used in Red Hat, right? And the X1 Carbon, and that's one of the reasons why they're up there. But yeah, we definitely want to be also help make the CSB experience better, basically, through fixing things upstream and then having the reality backport them to CSB.
So it's great. I think that everyone actually wants to be engaged somehow in this effort. But is there some, let's say, template or something? I mean, it's easy to run a test suite on your laptop and test some stuff, but how to actually report your findings, or is it like some way to help you, let's say, or have our results be helpful to you or something? Because I believe that it's gonna really kickstart your effort.
So
if the community gets involved, and they have an easy way to actually get involved.
yeah. So the question is, let's say we get community involvement. How can a community member get results on the wiki in an easier way than editing the wiki? It's sort of the same as Adam's question, right, about the tooling. We want the test suite in the end to just have a report button where it will then enter the results into ResultDB. You'll probably need fast credentials or something like that, right? We need some authentication to avoid spam. But yeah, we definitely want to make it not only easy to run the test by providing a live image where you can run the test suite, partly automatic, partly manual, but also we want to have an automated mechanism to submit results. As I said before, the page I have here now, currently this is manually written. We want these to be generated from a database. Probably not even in the wiki, probably just our own tool under the Fedora umbrella. But that's all future music, basically, right? We're going to do that when we get around to it. Hopefully somewhere the next year, basically. Okay, last question about this, and then I'm going to do the other bit of the talk.
I would say such a real case, real world example. On Lenovo laptops, there is Touchpad, and most of the users hate the Touchpad because when you are typing, you accidentally move with the mouse and click. So personally, I have disabled the Touchpad in BIOS, but this is not user friendly to go into BIOS. So are you going to target it? It should be disabled somehow in X Windows system, but at the same time, some users still traffic not the touchpad working, so there should be some question.
Oh, and now I can no longer turn it on again. So yeah, you can disable it without needing to go into the BIOS. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So actually, the question was for the recording from are we going to offer a way to, for example, disable the touchpad because some people don't like the touchpad because it gets in the way with typing? Well, we're targeting GNOME 3 that already has a checkbox to disable the touchpad, but we really don't want people to need to do this, right? I actually used to work on libinput together with Peter Hudderer, and we spend a lot of time on actually making this not necessary. Currently, I don't know when you've last tried it or if you're actually already using libinput in XFCE, but if you use libinput, as long as you're typing, the touchpad gets disabled, and it stays disabled for 200 or 300 milliseconds after your last key press. Same actually if you use the track point. The track point also disables the touchpad. Because when you use the track point, you use the mouse buttons and then you rest your hand on the touchpad. So we're really trying to make it, that's again a frictionless user. You shouldn't have to touch off your touchpad. We should be able to see that it's not really a finger trying to move the mouse, but it's a hand or a part of a thumb or whatever which is touching the touchpad. But we want to do both. We want to make it easy to turn it off if it really gets in your way, and we also want to make it so you don't have to turn it off. Okay, final question.
It was a comment on this topic. I noticed slightly different behavior with your Linux on the Mac OS, where if you start moving something and then try to, you have a second finger that touches it. All you do is sort of I guess the start scrolling at this time, or stop. So basically you stop what you're doing, whereas the Mac keeps the previous action going.
Okay. So the question is about what happens if you have a finger down on the touchpad and you're moving something and you hit with the second finger. And our behavior there currently is to switch to two-finger scrolling. And the Mac just keeps, if you already were clearly moving the pointer around, it just keeps moving the pointer around. Yeah, I think we could do better there. Please file a bug against lib input. So go to Bugzilla, choose component lib input. Peter Hudwer will pick it up. And I actually noticed the same thing when I was working in OpenOffice, that my slide would slide to the side where I was trying to edit it because I accidentally touched with the second finger. So I completely agree, and yeah, we need to do better there. Okay, so although this is really interesting, I also prepared a bit of presentation about something which I believe is also interesting, which is a lot of laptop users have Optimus, so they have a laptop which has an extra NVIDIA GPU in there for doing more graphical demanding stuff. And we support that somewhat using the Nouveau, the open source driver for NVIDIA GPUs, but the performance that way is not optimal. So a lot of people want to use the NVIDIA binary driver. But currently the experience is you install the NVIDIA binary driver and hopefully it works. Well, actually, if you install it on an Optimus laptop, it doesn't work. You need to manually create an xorg.conf which matches your exact hardware with PCI pads in there, etc., like at which PCI slot the card actually is, which is a pain. But let's say you even get to that point, or you're using a desktop with NVIDIA, then if you install a kernel update, things break and you get a black screen. Right? Nothing works. And you need to reboot into the BIOS, you need to force the machine off by holding the power button for 4 seconds, and then in grub add a command line option to not boot into the graphical user environment, and I can fix it, but our target audience cannot fix it. So we need to do better here, because this is something people want. This is also something which, for example, is important for people who want to use Steam on Linux. So for the last 2 months, this is actually what I've been working on mostly, for also as part of the new team already, because I started about 2 months ago, slightly longer. So what have I done? I have made some changes to the xorg.conf syntax so that we can have smarter configuration, that you can say if you see the NVIDIA kernel driver installed, then behave in this way, else behave in another way. So you don't need to manually edit config files when you switch. Basically what will happen now is if you do the kernel upgrade and you don't get the NVIDIA kernel model because it fails to build or whatever against the new kernel, it will fully automatically fall back to Nouveau. That's the idea. So it will do a number of things. We actually, in X, to do OpenGL, you need a GLX module, which implements the GL over X protocol, and NVIDIA has its own module. And we can load only one on the X server. So you can talk Mesa GLX or NVIDIA GLX. Another thing is the whole Optimus story I just was telling about, that if you install the binary driver on a laptop with Optimus, it just won't work unless you create a whole load of manual config. So what we do now, or rather what the NVIDIA package from third-party repositories does, is it can drop this config file in place. And this config file basically says if the kernel driver is NVIDIA DRM, then, well, use the NVIDIA X-side driver, make the NVIDIA GPU the primary GPU, so all your rendering is happening on the NVIDIA GPU. That's mandatory with the NVIDIA driver. It cannot do offload rendering. And it adds something to the module path so that the right GLX module will get loaded. So with this little snippet, as part of third-party NVIDIA drivers, almost all the manual configuration goes away actually, which is nice. Another big problem with using the NVIDIA driver is applications who use OpenGL. They open libgl.so, right, the libgl dynamic library, and that used to be Mesa. And the NVIDIA driver used to fix that by just copy its own copy over the open source version. Which means that if you need to fall back to the open source driver because the NVIDIA driver doesn't work, things still don't work because the application is loading the wrong OpenGL library. So we have a new stub library for that. So the actual OpenGL library now is a stub, which dispatches into the right library. It knows from the GLX module which one it needs to use. And then, so this is finished now. This is in updates testing, and hopefully soon we'll be able to make an announcement that we are working together with a third-party repository that you can just in GNOME software say, give me the NVIDIA binary driver, and it will be there. If you have enabled third-party sources in GNOME software. Right, there's a checkbox for that. If you're open source and you don't want this, you're not getting it. We're not forcing it on anyone. So a little demo. Currently, if you look at my kernel command line, it says blacklist the NVIDIA driver, so it will load the open source driver. And if I now run glxgears, it will say that, it will say here that it's running Mesa on Intel HD graphics. So it's using my CPU integrated graphics for OpenGL. And if I now run this thing, I actually had time to create a little, it says it's using the Nouveau driver. And I can switch to the NVIDIA driver and hit OK. And now it says it needs to reboot. Well, or you can reboot later, but you won't get the change until you reboot. I'm going to hit no now, because I want to show one more thing. And then if you now look at, the only change that tool makes is it changed the blacklist to Nouveau. It says don't use the Nouveau driver, and then the NVIDIA driver will auto-load, and vice versa. Now we're going to pray, I'm not going to get demo effect. So after this it should be using the NVIDIA driver. So no other changes, just change which kernel module gets loaded. I still need to write a little daemon which actually checks before it starts the graphical login manager if the NVIDIA driver successfully loaded. And if it didn't, then force load Nouveau even if it was blacklisted. So you at least get a user interface and not a black screen. But that's the last bit.
This daemon, for instance, will be present on all Fedora workstation or only the ones with NVIDIA stuff on it? Because it's like, I don't have any NVIDIA.
Okay, so the question is, will these tools, the switching tool and the daemon to make sure Nouveau gets loaded, even if it was blacklisted, be present on all Fedora machines? No, it won't. It will only get installed as part of the NVIDIA driver package which you get from a third-party repository. It didn't remember the settings for the beamer. Oh well. Oh, maybe it changed because driver changes, whatever. You should get a more interesting picture now. Yes. And as you can see, it's now saying it's running on the GeoForce. There's no more Mesa in there because this is actually the NVIDIA binary driver on top of the NVIDIA GPU. So my entire desktop environment is now being rendered by the NVIDIA GPU, but being displayed by the Intel GPU. All the rendered frames are being passed over the PCI bus because the NVIDIA GPU on this laptop isn't hooked up to any video outputs. But it works, so if you now want to play games on this laptop which need advanced NVIDIA OpenGL features, it should work. And what I forgot to do was run PowerTop. Normally, PowerTop idle on my machine is about 8 watts. And now it's 70.3 watts. It will probably get slightly better if I keep talking for a minute or two, but it won't get much better. So the difference is about 8 watts just because I turned on the NVIDIA GPU. which is also why I did the switching tool. So if you then need your horsepower, you can switch to the binary driver, and if you don't, you can run the open source stack, which is way more energy efficient because it does everything on the Intel GPU. Unfortunately, it requires a reboot, but it actually dropped down to only, that's not bad. It's only 2 or 3 watts more. They improved a lot in this generation GPUs. So, I guess any more questions about this or about the original topic?
Hey Hans, can you show device stats instead of the overview?
Can I show device stats instead of you mean this one?
Yeah. All right.
So, are there any more? About anything, Torsten?
This is all requiring XR stack, isn't it? Or does it work on Wayland already?
No, this is all requiring, using the NVIDIA driver. The binary driver requires using the X11 stack. Yes, this is not yet available on Wayland. A very good question.
You had to reboot because you couldn't unload the remote module, or what was the reason to reboot rather than...
It is possible to drop back to text mode and then... Oh, sorry. The question was, why did you have to reboot? Can't you just remove one kernel module and driver, insert the other kernel driver? So it is possible to switch back to text mode, disable the frame buffer console, remove the Nouveau driver, and install the NVIDIA driver, or the other way around. But both of them expect to find the GPU in a pristine state. So it will work most of the time, but not all of the time. So I prefer to do just reboot and make sure it works everywhere. I know that actually what you're saying is what Ubuntu does. They have a tool which actually allows this. That way you only need to log out and in. You don't need to reboot. But that's pretty fragile, and I don't want to go there. I've talked to both the NVIDIA Unix guys, who I've met a number of times, and to Ben Skeks, one of the Nouveau developers, and neither of them are really enthusiastic about the way Ubuntu is doing this. They both think it's a bad idea. Any more questions?
So the whole desktop is generated with the NVIDIA GPU in this case. Is there some plans by NVIDIA for proper time support to just use the NVIDIA GPU when you want to use it for a game, for example?
So the question is, currently if you use the NVIDIA driver on an Optimus laptop, the whole desktop is rendered by the NVIDIA GPU. Are there some plans to allow offload rendering so that you use the Intel GPU for just desktop thingies, but if you want to run Blender or a game, you can use the NVIDIA GPU? At the moment, there are, to the best of my knowledge, no plans for that from the NVIDIA side. They don't care much about that use case.
I can say that this works on, we've got it on open source driver. You can use like a dual configuration.
Oh yes,
Dual GPU configuration, and you can use the Intel GA output to like that additional.
Yeah, so the remark was that doing this, so using the Intel GPU for most stuff and offloading some stuff to the NVIDIA GPU does work with the open source stack. That's correct. It works on both Wayland and Xorg X11. You can run the more energy efficient Intel GPU and use the NVIDIA GPU when you need to. But the performance of Nouveau is such that you don't win a lot on modern GPUs, because we don't allow changing the clock speed of the GPU, so it's running at its boot speed, which is low.
I said Radeon. AMD, not.
Oh, AMD, yeah. It's possible with the open source stack for NVIDIA too, but yeah. On AMD, we get much better performance then, yes. Well, if there are no more questions, I'm exactly within time. Thank you for your time. That's all.
Oh, you changed the format of the presentation just a bit because it was more cooperative, ask a question now.
Oh, yeah, I was...
It's not the standard, I've got a presentation and questions, so we will...
No, I was thinking I have 2 topics and there will be lots of discussion about the first topic.
No problem, we just, had to improvise with the signs.
Yeah. It's useful there's a clock over there. That helps.
Yeah.
Anyway, so...
We'll have to provide some feedback to the session chair managers that the signs, there's a font and the sign is just very small.
Okay.
Well, we can sit over there.
But it was good you flash the sign, repeat the question every now and then, because that's, I know it, but somehow you forget it sometimes. So
it's normal.
Yeah, just focusing on the talk and just forget about it.
But it doesn't really matter whether I should be sitting over there. The font has to be, what's the matter being, it's portrait. It should be landscape.
Yeah, it should be a landscape.
Font.
Yeah, definitely, it should be landscape.
Agreed.
This would be probably easier to read it. Nikdo to nikdy nechtěl se introducovat. Will you be using BG or HDMI? Okay, sure. It works. Yeah. We've just tested it with the last speaker, so...
The only thing you have to do is just swap the resolution of the output, some matching by the aspect ratio.
Okay. Cool. That's
the second question is...
We'll give that a try. When you will be speaking, this is the microphone only for recording, so...
We don't have any handout microphones, so we just
stay in here.
Stay in the area and speak a bit louder so everyone can hear.
And also repeat the question, please, for the recording.
Yeah, no worries. We've got some slides that we'll be showing you. During the talk, you have 10 minutes remaining, 5 minutes remaining.
Okay.
If there are questions, I will be almost constantly holding up the sign saying repeat the question to the microphone for the sake of recording.
Okay. How much time should we do until questions? 40 minutes?
So you've got the longest of the 1 hour, right?
Okay.
So you've got 45 minutes for the talk, and then 10 minutes is planned for the questions.
Okay.
We can modify it depending how much time you need for your talk. So
yeah, we can improvise, or if you plan to changing the format of your presentation, so you've got logical parts of your presentation, so you've got let's say 20 minutes, and then let the audience ask questions, and then do another 20 minutes, and then let them ask questions again.
Basically depends on you, and we will adjust it, and we will show you the signs that you have 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left, 1 minute left, and out of time, and last question, and those kind of stuff.
Do we want to add questions during the talk?
I don't mind questions during the talk. Mention it. Yeah, I'll say that. I didn't rename it. I was sure it's called Fedora. I guess I didn't rename the file. We need power. My laptop's been on battery all day. And you can also use the clicker for the presentation with the lazy pointer.